And just to be clear and to clarify, the only strict rules of this specific video are that they have had to be published January 1st, 2024 or later. And also, if a new number one came out in December, I'm not going to include it because I don't feel like there's enough of a new series or something to talk about in that aspect. No graphic novels. These are all series that have had a number one published from January 1st, 2024 to November 31st, 2024, the 30th. How many days does November have? The first book that we are going to be talking about is the DC All-In number one special that came out in October. Now, for all of those who are unfamiliar, DC All-In is part of DC's all-new initiative that relaunched a lot of comics in October of 2024 as sort of another jumping in point for everybody. This also featured the return of Scott Snyder back to DC Comics after he had been in independent waters and Comixology right after the Dark Knight's Death Metal miniseries event that came out in 2020, and now he's back at DC. The most interesting thing about the DC All-In special is that the Absolute Universe is actually part of a flip book in this book. There are two sides to the All-In special, and if the Rebirth number one issue was all about bringing the price down to $2.99 for an 80-pager, this special is about the uniqueness of the comic book form in the way that it can tell stories in different parts of the medium. If you actually look through the inside of this book, there are two parts of this comic. The front features the regular Earth Zero continuity with the Justice League getting back into form and some other surprises that I don't want to talk about in this specific issue for spoilers, but it also features the Absolute Universe when you flip over the book to see what Darkseid is handling in a new universe that is created, and we are going to be getting to see a lot of different characters and different interpretations spin out from this book. So you do get the best of both worlds, you do get the Absolute Universe, and you also get the uniqueness, again, of what makes a comic book special compared to other mediums. This is a way to do it. And of course, Wes Craig and Daniel Sampere are no strangers to the comic book format. Wes Craig recently doing Kaya in one of my favorite indie series of all time, Deadly Class, on top of Daniel Sampere, who had just been on Wonder Woman with Tom King and is continuing to do Wonder Woman with Tom King, and also the Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths event, have both teamed up to deliver this issue, Sampere being on Earth Zero, and then Wes Craig starting up the Absolute line. And Dan Mora does a page in the middle, and I'm not going to spoil what that issue is, but it is a very, very nice surprise to see. So yes, I'm all into All-In, as if you guys haven't been watching this channel for the last couple of months. It is very clear that I am back over at DC enjoying their content to the full, and I can't wait to see what else comes about, and some of these are also included in the list. At number 9 is a big surprise, and that is actually Blood Hunt, the event by Marvel that came out this year during the summer of 2024 with Jed MacKay, the current Avengers and X-Men writer, at the helm. Blood Hunt is an interesting prospect for me because usually I am very much into events, but the events that I do read sometimes fall flat for me, and sometimes I just ask myself, did this really need to be an event, or was it something that is being used to prop up sales and marketing for other characters of the franchises and the universe that the companies are making, or is it a way for sales to be pitched up for certain books? Luckily, Blood Hunt I don't think falls into this category. We see a lot of issues tying in, obviously, with Doctor Strange and Moon Knight being Jed MacKay already written books being thrusted into the fold, but we did get to see other parts of the universe also thrusted in here. Now, my thing is, I've never been a big vampire guy, and I was asking myself, was this something that I really wanted to toss my hat into when the first issue came out? And then I saw MacKay's name on it, and then Pepe Larraz, who had drawn House of X, Duggan's X-Men. You want to talk about any big event for the X line in the last couple of years, he has done it. Him drawing the book with Marta Garcia, adding the spectacular colors onto it, it just looked flat out amazing. You want to care about vampires, you want to turn the clock down and put the sun down, this is the way to do a Marvel event, and this ended up also being one of my top 4 Marvel events in the last 5 years. And one other thing to note here, there were also Red Band issues that did come out by Marvel. What those Red Band issues were more mature and different contexts slash dialogue and added context slash dialogue in the book for a mature audience. A lot more blood, a lot more gore, a lot more deadliness as far as the comic book is concerned. I think if anything, Bloodhound was a big success for Marvel. It was a big success for Jed McKay, who is now on Avengers and X-Men, the first time it's been since Roy Thomas back in the 70s. That is already a big achievement in and of itself. And also getting to see the brand new roster that has come about on Avengers is something that I have enjoyed and probably would have been on this list if it had not come out this year, but last year. So this has been really big, and I love Bloodhound, and I really want everybody else to have a shot to read it as well. At number 8 is Zatanna, Bring Down the House by Mariko Tamaki and Javier Rodriguez. Mariko Tamaki has been a really big writer over at DC for me for the last couple of years. Reading her Detective Comics run with Dan Mora on art was definitely a treat, along with the added in weekly event that they ran for Detective that also ended up being high on my list. Who would have known that House of Secrets would have been high on that list? But nonetheless, I had to put a Black Label series here somewhere, and while there haven't been any big spotlights from the magazine format for me just because of the lack of release, I would say that has come out this year. This is something that definitely piqued my interest, and I'm so glad that I did not get a chance to miss out on this. This was something that I had been looking forward to for a long time because I'm a big Zatanna fan. I'm a fan of her in the Batman animated series TV show, along with multiple movies. And whenever she stars in something, I'm always looking for it, even with the backwards talking and sometimes making my head hurt. Well, I'll make my head hurt if Zatanna is going to be a part of it. Not only does Tamaki bring an elevated script, and a very fun one at that, with the situations that she's thrown in Las Vegas, Javier Rodriguez gets his own chance to put a spin on things, and the Black Label imprint means more creative freedom, something that I'm going to be talking about a lot later in regards to all of the other books that I will be talking about in this top 10. This is definitely a vibrant and fun book if you want something magical and if you want something thrown in your way where you're just brought into the fold and you just have a sense of appreciation for not only the medium but also the story that Tamaki and Javi are telling in this book. Zatanna, Bring Down the House is definitely up there for me. It's had some killer covers too from Jenny Frison, Artgerm, and Souza Micah. This is absolutely one that you need to pick up at some point, and I know that it's a standard hardcover that's going to be coming down the line. Hopefully they put a deluxe of it out soon, because Javi Rodriguez, I think, deserves it, and Tamaki gets another chance to put her name out there as one of my favorite writers coming out now in the industry. At number 7, we've got Aliens vs. Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, Esad Ribic, and Eve Svorsina. Aliens vs. Avengers. It's all led to this. If this is a Secret Wars 2015 sequel, then I am all in for it. I know nothing about Alien. Believe it or not, guys, the only thing I know about Alien, I know who the protagonists are, I know what the storyline is, and I know the impact that that movie has had on a lot of people in the American populace and also the world populace at that. That was not one I ever watched as a kid because I was scared to death of those things. I also was not allowed to watch a lot of horror when I was a kid. I don't think I would have gravitated towards that anyways because I have anxiety. I guess this is me sort of coming out with that now, but I'm not one to push the buttons on, because when my buttons are pushed, I am jumping all around the place. So when I went into this, the only reason that I had picked this up was because this is the Secret Wars 2015 creative team on a book about the end of the world again, and I had to pick it up specifically for that. I think, if anything, a lot of the issues that were stemming from Hickman books right after Ten of Swords sort of were pushed off aside here. Obviously, Hickman has had a really big renaissance, I think, with the Three Worlds, Three Moon imprint over on Substack, along with his Decorum indie that everybody should check out. It has one of my favorite protagonists in there from the last 3-4 years. This is one that you should pick up. It is wild, it's chaotic, and it's yet again another semblance and bucket of the hat of this is wild fun, and I want to see where this is continuing to go. The only knockdown that I've had for this is that I think I've reported delays on like this specific series 2 or 3 times in the last like 2 months, which is a little bit more. Even Marvel got the solicitation date wrong when they sent out solicits. So it's nice to have something out there that is not only made by my favorite creator ever, but this is also something that I think everybody should pick up just for the easeability to get into it, and also knowing that it's the end of everything that there is. And if there already hasn't been enough, Esad Ribic on the art just makes it feel grander. It makes me feel like I'm seeing the last incursion happen again at Marvel, and seeing it happen here in this created world, the 20th Century Fox Studios imprint. It makes it even better to tell the tale there. All right, what is going on, guys? I have brought over a friend to talk with me about some of their favorite comics of the year, and that is none other than one of my close buds all across the pond. That is none other than Joe from Joe Talks Comics.
Hi, yeah. I mean, thanks for having me to just have a quick chat about these comics. I think it's really cool, all these things like bringing people together and talking about their favorite comics of the years. I think Ultimate X-Men is definitely one of the favorites of the year. And then we briefly talked a bit about the Ultimate books. I think what's really made it stick in my mind is not just the actual quality of the book itself, but what a surprise it was. It was like such an unexpected hit of the year, and it's nothing like a typical Marvel. But then Ultimate X-Men by Peter Momoko with that intriguing first cover of armor, and yeah, as you say, like Demon Days was like fantastic. I remember reading that with like the big treasure edition paperback, which is perfect for her artwork. And so going into it, just not knowing what to expect, even more so than the other Ultimate titles, and just being blown away by that first issue, and just the it's all so fresh and exciting and completely new. Again, even more so than it's always like it's taking everything about the Ultimate Universe and really like taking it just so much further in such a special way. I think it's also interesting with the first year of Ultimate X-Men almost behind us, and the announcement of Ultimate Wolverine, which I think threw some people off because the idea of like after this is so different. It's like, oh, are we going to get a more traditional X-Men title in the Ultimate Universe? And of course, if you have seen the announcement for Ultimate Wolverine, it's not quite like the normal 616 version. It's not just a repeat of that. But when we get solicits with more and more issues, it sort of gets people thinking, like, is this going to be more what you would expect from an X-Men title? And so it's sort of interesting to have that as a comparison, especially as well with the artwork, that to be more descriptive actually feels like wispy and magical and just really fits the tone of the story. If you weren't familiar with her artwork, then I think it's obviously really important to note that explicitly. It will be interesting to see how the discourse on it evolves over the years as it's collected in trades and everything. Because I know that has been part of it is some people thinking it will read better like that or preferring to read it like that. And the whole conversation about the Ultimate Universe in general with that the month by month timeline and that real time progression has been interesting for each of the books. And I have my thoughts on that for all of the books. And I've been someone that has been personally really enjoying how it's been unfolding month to month. It feels like it's like deliberately slow, but it hasn't felt frustrating to me, at least, in terms of how it's been unfolding. It feels like it's been just dripping out those details at like a careful pace while still keeping me like invested. And as you say, coming out consistently month by month, which is really impressive, especially for someone who hadn't done like an American comic ongoing before, like Demon Days and things were miniseries.
And at number 6, we had to put this somewhere, right? Absolute Batman by Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta, right? This has been a wild book. And by wild book, I mean this is throwing stuff at a wall, but hitting every spot at the wall that this is concerned about. I have been waiting to see what Scott could do with an imprint at DC again, because I remember talking to somebody back in the year 2019 and saying, "Oh, Batman Last Night on Earth is going to be the last Scott Snyder story for Batman." And he said, "Well, until he gets another shot at it, and then he does it all over again." Well, I had to even get the noir edition. For those who don't know, the noir edition for these books are all black and white. They are just the straight pencils and inks without the added colors. I love Frank Martin, man, but man, Nick Dragotta just absolutely elevates the scripting here. And for all of the Scott Snyder entailing of big text boxes, which is something that Tynion incorporated early on to his career and still sometimes does, it is perfect. It's a perfect blend of how many panels there are in each book, in each page, in every single issue. You never feel overwhelmed with Absolute Batman, even though you are getting everything thrown at you as a reader. And what you are thrown in as a reader is Scott Snyder saying this is going to be a different take on Batman. It's going to be a lot more extreme. We're just going to delve into every single part of the wacky, wild that you could think of for a comic book. It's clear that they're just having a lot of fun with the series. They are just mashing all of these different toys together, whether it's the villains or the tech that Batman has, and even some of the characters that are different in this universe as opposed to Earth Zero continuity. It is a perfect blend of everything that you could want in a comic that doesn't take itself too seriously. And that is the Scott that I think that I have been waiting for such a long time. It feels like I'm reading Dark Knight's Metal, just in a different context, in a different sense than it is doing the Crisis event. It's Scott really putting what his pitch is and saying, I am just going to mash and mash until I get something out. And that something out has been wonderful. And if you guys haven't reading it or haven't been talking about it, I think you should at some point. And surprisingly, that wasn't even my number one Batman comic of the year, because that honor belongs to Mark Waid and Chris Samnee's Batman and Robin Year One. And in fact, I even had to go as far as to get the Batman and Robin Year One. This is the retelling of the classic dynamic duo's first time together in the field, operating alongside one another. And looking at it from a different context, I had gotten a chance to talk to Mark Waid about this earlier this year, and something that struck me as far as the comparisons between Bruce and Dick were concerned were that Bruce and Dick come from the same background but have a completely different look on life. It allows Waid to have a chance to create dynamics and to create humor in a way that doesn't feel forced or unnecessary. It feels fresh, and it feels that you are it feels fresh, and you never get a sense of boredom or a lack of interest because the dynamic is there. It's two characters sitting in a room. You could be doing a Batman and Robin book with them sitting around, and Waid will find a way to make it work, and that is why the base pitch for this works. But not only that, Chris Samnee is clearly having the time of his life in the project. In fact, I am even going to say that this is his best looking book. I love Chris Samnee. I've loved him on Daredevil. I've loved him on Somna, and I love him on Jana, and I also love him on Black Widow. He is not immune to me picking up any one of these books. Firepower, I will pick up a Chris Samnee book because it has his name on it. This is Samnee and Waid essentially giving us the definitive take on what a Robin Year One looks like with Bruce in it. In fact, this already might be taking up my spot as the definitive origin for these two as a dynamic duo. This takes the cake for me. At number 4, we do have Avengers Twilight by Chip Zdarsky and Daniel Acuna. This was actually surprising for me. I feel like a lot of people forgot about this series, and unfortunately so, because this was something in Chip's back burner for such a long time. When he finally got a chance to put it out, he really showed people what he could do as a storyteller. I love Chip Zdarsky. His Daredevil run is one of my favorites. His Spectacular Spider-Man run is one of my favorites. His Spider-Man Life Story is also one of my... I feel like I could go down the list of what I just love about Chip Zdarsky as a creator, as a writer, as an artist, as everything. Public Domain is amazing. But if I had to put any spin on this, it is telling about a story of Captain America being thrusted into a future that is completely different and shed. We have the Avengers no longer being there. And what is the dream? What is the American dream? What is a world without Avengers, and what does that look like, especially when it seems like the ideals are gone by? Well, this aims to solve it. It very much is like an Earth X meets Kingdom Come type of story, but in a sense that you get to see everything from the lens of Steve Rogers instead of, say, a photographer or Superman or anybody else. We get to see it through the lens of somebody who has had ideals in the past, has stuck by them, and has seen them get twisted and needs to respond to something about it. And not only that, Daniel Acuna brings this book to life. Daniel Acuna is one of my favorite artists as well. He was on Flash with Jeff Johns. He was also on Green Lantern with Jeff Johns, and later got to Uncanny Avengers with Rick Remender. Some of those future stories, oh my goodness, they were fun. And when I read Uncanny Avengers right before this book came out, I went, Daniel Acuna is literally the perfect person to draw this sci-fi future-esque book with Captain America being featured as the person that we are following through as an audience. So in that case, this ends up as being one of my top books of the year. And I am very, very, very surprised that not only more people haven't been talking about it, it's just gotten pulled to the side because we've had so many other amazing books. So this ends up as number 4 for me, and I think everybody should have a chance to pick this up. And also, Marvel, let's get a hardcover of this out. We need Daniel Acuna in oversized.
Ginny Barr's The Boy Wonder from DC, starring Damian Wayne, was another of my favorites of the year, and I actually got to talk with on the podcast like right when issue one came out, which was really cool. Um, but I remember because it was like announced back in like February because it started in May, and so it was one of maybe the earliest announcement of the year. That even from when it was announced, this is like February. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be one of the best books of the year. And then like what 10 months later, I can still sort of stick by that because the way that it's used Damien's history, it applies it in a fun like fairy tale type narrative, like frames all the different Robins as in their position to him and explores their relationships and does it all in a very emotional and heartfelt way that it was really sweet to read. And of course, I suppose similarly, Ginny Barr also has a very distinctive like stylistic style, really like cartoonish in its own way, with, like the vibrant colours I think from Chris O'Halloran, which was really cool to see. And again, it's one that I think was really cool to read month to month, but will read amazing just like as one collection that you can just hand to people or that people can go out and get 'cause it's not tied to continuity. So it is something that is just hopefully available to for people to read and enjoy. It's interesting as an example of a black label comic that isn't black label because it's like mature necessarily, but just to give it that freedom. And I think it is important, the whole idea of it exploring Damien's history, but not just doing it to just like needlessly pick at like continuity for nostalgia or just like retread the same sort of things, but to actually tell something that's like fresh and exciting and where Ginny Barr has like his own defined take on it that's inspired by like lots of other things which he has talked about in interviews and things that is actually bringing something new to the table and sort of like picking and choosing his like best parts or his like favorite parts from continuity to actually tell the story rather than feeling need to like stuff everything in because it is only 5 issues, but it feels like it uses that 5 issues like really effectively. Like for like the first like few issues of the series, like each focuses on a different Robin, so it has that cool structural element to it, and then obviously it all comes together at the end. So it was just a really satisfying and memorable read for
It
sure. Yeah, and it's also interesting the way that, like you mentioned, with the characters like Jason, how because of the fairy tale type storytelling, I think it also fits into that. But each Robin feels distilled into like their primary qualities, but not in a way that feels like reductive or stereotypical. Like he manages to sort of get the essence of the characters in a concise way, but not in a like reductive way, I guess is maybe the way to say it. Like Jason is like broken and hurt and whereas like in that Tim issue he's sort of very like sprightly and very like smart and athletic and everything and yeah, it just sort of yeah, it carries through that each of the issues, like showing the archetypes of these characters in the way of a fairy tale, but still giving it lots of needed depth and emotion. You can find my Instagram, Joe Loves Comics, on Blue Sky, Joe Talks Comics, cast, obviously Joe Talks Comics, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and hopefully other places where you can get your podcast. Thanks, yeah, Dom, for having me. It's always great to chat. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And now on to the rest of my list. Now, the next three books are going to be very much the 1A, 1B, 1C. I don't think I can put some of these over the other because all of my experiences and enjoyment with them are very, very, very similar and so close to the point where I am just going, I am just picking hairs with these. But at number three, I have to go with Ultimate Spider-Man. I actually want to thank Jonathan Hickman in this case because Ultimate Spider-Man has been a delight and also has gotten me back into the fold of reviewing comics. I actually kind of stopped from 2022, late 2022 to 2023-ish, and then I put a video out reviewing Ultimate Spider-Man 1 in two separate forms. There was like a podcast one, and then there was one doing an analysis of the panels and the layout and everything else. And I actually want to thank Joe in that case too, because he was one of the first people to tell me to do it. Unfortunately, I had to stop the series because I just couldn't keep up, and my shops going to the shops frequency was also different. But I had to, in the case of this is the comic that really put me back on the map and told me you need to put out some more videos like this. People are going to love it. People are going to love what you're doing on the channel. So I want to thank Joe and everybody else in that regard because this was really the comic that brought me back into the fold. And also Justin too. I know you're watching, so thank you on that. But this is part of the Ultimate Universe for Marvel. And like I had mentioned earlier with the DC All In special, DC also kind of copied the essence of Ultimate Invasion in that there was a reason to why all of this was happening. Now, while granted, this wasn't all Jonathan Hickman's base level line. Donny Cates was the creator slash founder for all of the brand new Ultimate Universe before he got into the accident. So this is what we do have instead. And by golly, I'm really happy that it came out the way it did. Jonathan Hickman is no stranger when it comes to the big world unfolding and everything is getting leveled type of storyline. We already saw that in Fantastic Four and, of course, Avengers, New Avengers, which led into Secret Wars. But this is really a ground level story that he is trying to tell with Peter Parker and a complete reimagining of his mythos. Mary Jane is in a completely different sort of world than she was in the regular 616 continuity. Even characters like J. Jonah Jameson and a couple of other surprises that are also thrown in here are just a treat to read. It is so nice to see that other creators have different ideas for whatever stories they are trying to tell. And one thing about Hickman is that it really is about being driven by the story that you are trying to tell. And the more that it unfolds, the more that I understand what he is trying to say along with this book. Now, granted, this is a different type of book than most others. The Ultimate line actually follows a month-by-month format, so each issue is a separate month in terms of what the story is being told over a year. So when the January book is being released out, it is in January. And actually, one thing that you will notice on the bottom-hand side, if I actually zoom in a bit, it does say December 2024 on there. And the December 2024 does indicate what time of year the issue is taking hold of. Some people are saying it's a cover, because it usually is a cover date. Cover date also covers in the fact that it's a different date than the actual release date, usually 1 to 2 months, 2 months usually after an issue pops out. So you do have the indicia saying this is what time the book is coming out. But not only on top of that, Ultimate Spider-Man allows Jonathan Hickman to do a complete retake on some of the Spider-Man characters that have been popping up in recent memory and also forever. Mary Jane is in a completely different setting than she is on 616. He also has kids, if you have not seen the pictures or any of the panels that are being shown on here. So it is a completely different take on those characters, but also is a different take on a supporting cast. J. Jonah Jameson is in a completely different role than he is on Earth 616, and so is Harry, and some other characters that I don't think I want to spoil for you here just yet, because I do think that this is worth a read if you are a Spidey fan and just a Marvel Comics fan in general. It is so nice to see that creators like Jonathan Hickman are not only getting a chance to tell the story that they want to in the lights that they want to, they're not being interfered by anybody above. This is also something that I think Hickman was sort of struggling with the X-Men, and I love his X-Men. His X-Men run is my favorite, but I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't feel underwhelmed a bit with the way that he ended things before he decided to call it quits on Marvel for a little bit of time. It is something that is... Jonathan Hickman is also trying out something different. It's not the end of the world, at least not yet. So we do get to see characters breathe out a little bit before they have to deal with, hey, so the island of Krakoa, there's an emergency, we got a tournament to do. There's nothing like that. It is very nice, it's very grounded, and it gives us a different look at what he is as a writer, not just doing the same thing over and over again, because I think that was sort of getting to him. A lot of the X-Men was plotted in a way that was like Avengers. Well, we get to see a Hickman that doesn't have that. And that difference, I think, not only tells you something about him as a creator, but being able to mold his experiences and do something else along with it. And the more control you are out of, well, the more control you're going to have. So overall, I think Hickman's Ultimate Spider-Man is amazing, and I think everybody should get a chance to read it at some point, because it is continuing to be a book that I keep my eyes on every single month that it comes out. And also coming out every single month too is Ultimates by Dennis Camp, one for Yari and Phil Noto. You know, I can't lie to you when I said that this book and the Ultimate Universe were just two things. I can't lie to you when I say the Ultimate Universe hasn't shaped me as a person in a different manner than I would. I feel so emotionally attached to these characters that it's very impossible for me to let go of a lot of what's been happening on with the case of Marvel and DC. But this book really makes your head spin, but in a good way. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've been in a conversation with someone this year where they're telling me that comics are just collectibles, or they're just made to be put on a shelf, or they're just made so that you can have fun. In comics, of course, you can have fun with your books. You can have fun with the way that you are putting things out. That is all cool and dandy, because at the end of the day, comics are supposed to uplift people. They're supposed to make you feel something. But the way that the feelings of myself are tugged along in this book, it's impossible for me to put into words how much this has impacted my life. It's something that I haven't felt in such a long time, that I couldn't put this book down. Everything that happens in each of these issues, as we are aiming towards Tony Stark and Captain America and Thor and everybody else trying to figure out what to change about the world and looking at different ways that the world is looked at. Some of these issues, I mean, I can't even speak on the one where the non-binary indigenous Hawkeye gets a chance to meet Captain America and sees the stars on that uniform, and they have a completely different reaction to it than what most people would. There's stuff like that where your jaws just drop and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I want more comics to be like that. Not saying that every comic needs to be that, but it makes you think differently in a way that I don't think you could have experienced before. And obviously this all delves back into the, politics need to be out of comics. Comics need to be apolitical. And I'm probably going to get flamed down in the comments section. But the best part about these books is that when these make us feel something, your experience is heightened by it. And I don't know if I have anything else to say besides this is the most thought-provoking book that I've read in 2024, and Dennis Camp might legitimately, objectively be the best writer in the industry right now. We need more books like this, not in the case of just to have something that makes your mind think, but something that pushes the envelope. And also, too, no shot to Juan Frigeri, but man, if it would have been D.K. Rawan or somebody else who was drawing the book, A+ tier artist, this would have been a 10 out of 10 for me. No question. And number one, I know I've been praising and singing the everything else that the Absolute Universe is at. And at number one, I know that I've been praising this book for quite a long time, but yeah, Absolute Wonder Woman takes the number one spot for me. I don't even have to recount anything along the lines of that sort. Wonder Woman is my number one because of everything that I previously said with the Dennis Camp book. Typically, when a lot of these books that are creator driven come out from not only Marvel and DC, but also whatever publishers that they are running through, it is really the writers getting a chance to do more because they feel more obligated to. It's their, they own it. That's theirs. There's going to be a time and day in 5-10 years when I say, man, Kelly Thompson wrote my favorite Wonder Woman, and that's the only Wonder Woman writer who was on that run, shaping it in a way that no one can take away from her. There are books that I reread, like single issues that I'll reread every single time, like I go to a shop or I go to a library, or I'll bring it along with me to class. Maybe before class starts, I'm like, I gotta read the single issue. I don't think I've read any more single issues like over and over again. I think I've read the single issue at least like 10 times. It was impossible for me to put this book down. The moment that I saw Gateway City and I flipped through looking at the brand new creatures that were thrown into the wind, whew, I mean, goodness sakes, like the comics should not look this good. They should not feel this good. And also, too, there is another sense of emotion that is thrown in with this as well. Kelly Thompson is a really, really good family writer. And I don't think that she gets enough credit that she deserves for being that great of a family writer. But she is. And in some aspects, I wish that she wrote a Fantastic Four book at Marvel, what we could have seen there. And we get the same with Diana and also another family member of hers who is introduced in this book. That is the big twist. The big twist that I did not foresee coming, that I thought, wipe everything else away. That why can't we have this in the regular DC universe? It is such a wonderful tale, a wonderful first issue, and the second issue just as spectacular. I can't put into words how much I've read Absolute Wonder Woman 1 and 2, waiting for 3 to come out. Is like, is it already Christmas time yet? Is it Christmas Day? I need to go to my comic shop and pick it up. No words. I can't express the amount of love that I felt in this book. And also the case too of Hayden Sherman being thrown onto the panels, and every single part of what they're doing is just mind-blowing to me. And Jordi Belair colors, as if anybody needs to say anything about her coloring. And Becca Carey on the font choice, the scribbles out, and getting to talk to Kelly Thompson about the lettering, I think, was one of the highlights of the year for me, because I love it when letterers get a chance to show off their artistic capabilities, because they are just as important as the scripter, as the illustrator, and as the finisher. So this for me will take number one. I do not care what anyone says. It is my number one book of the year. And I am really, really glad that we have had so many comics this year. Too many to count. A couple more videos like this will be coming out in the next couple of days, so be sure to check into that. If you haven't yet, check out our website, comicreleases.com, my and Webhead's love letter to comics, a hotspot where you can finally figure out what's coming out, when, from what place. Our unique upcoming website tracker in the Collected Editions tab makes sure that you're on top of every single collected edition coming out on the market, with release date updates to the minute, from the tiniest graphic novels to the giant Generator Deluxe hardcovers as large as an absolute. Our unique spreadsheet not only gives out the most accurate information out there, but our format also filters and ensure that you can find your books as quickly as possible. The tracker also gives out links to domestic and international retailers so that you can purchase your comic books at the snap of a finger. We are also proud to host monthly solicitations as per given by the publishers that generously send us information to give to you all. From the Ultimate Universe to the creator-loved Oceans and Universes, we specialize in giving you the most readable format of solicitations without any of the annoying advertisements. If you also donate to our Patreon at just $2 a month, which is less than a coffee at Starbucks, you will receive access to a special watch list dedicated to individually tracking items that are on your wish list, past or present. Place in your tracking number and make sure that these books also not only come in safe, you can even put in special comments on these as well. On top of that, your name will also show up at the end of every single Dom of X video creates as a huge thank you. That is comicreleases.com. For more information, check this out down in the description. If you also want to contact me or Webhead, check the contact forms down in the description or email me down in the description. And that's going to be it for me. I am Dom of X. Let me know what your top 10, some of your favorite series of 2024 have come out this year. That's going to be it from me. You be you. Dominate the day wherever you go.